friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here for another Monday This and That vlog. And if you're new to my channel, what this is a weekly vlog that I do to cover a whole bunch of different topics, leading you back to old videos, letting you know of things yet to come, sharing with you some experiments of things I've been doing, and answering questions that have come in and whatever else I feel like talking about. So let's get to the topics of today. But real quick before I start, just if the lighting looks different, that's simply because our public power is out, which runs the overhead light up here, which gives me a little more light coming down. But thankfully we have solar power, and so my ring light, my string lights all around, I'm able to run those, and so that's great. So anyway, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the peach peel syrup that I made. And I did intentionally make syrup because peaches without some kind of pectin or a gelatin or whatever added to it, which I considered, they're just not going to set up no matter how much you cook them. So in this case, since I have a lot of jam and butters anyway, I decided to just go ahead and go with the syrup. We use both pretty much equally. But anyway, Patrick was down in California for a couple of weeks, helping his dad with a lot of things. And his dad has a peach tree, and it's just right, the peaches right at that point where they're just perfect. I mean, they're so sweet and juicy and wonderful. So he brought up several boxes of peaches, and I did get some canned up. I just have a couple jars sitting here. And then when I was doing that, normally what I do is when I'm canning peaches, I'll take the skins and the pits and I'll make vinegar, like the apple vinegar I have going on back here. And peach vinegar is great. It's one of the ones that gets the biggest scobies on it. But anyway, I have so much vinegar, not just what I have going, but so much put up that I decided I don't want to do vinegar this time with the peaches. And so what I decided to do was it was just a random thought I had. And this is one of the reasons I want to share it with you, is that just go with it. You know, if you get an idea, just go with it. I took the skins as I was skinning them, and that way I just use a knife, so I don't mind if I get a good chunk of the peach in there too for more flavor. Threw them in the blender and just processed them, kept keeping track of how many cups that I had, and then put it into a big pan. I didn't take any pictures along the way. Sorry, I don't have any to share with you. And then usually when you're making a syrup or a jam, typically you're going to use approximately equal amounts of sugar to fruit. And so I did that, and especially consider your skins aren't going to have as much of the sweetness in them as the fruit itself, the flesh of the fruit. I just cooked it till it got nice and thick. I finally had remembered I'd taken some of my rhubarb a couple years ago and powdered it up, the dehydrated rhubarb from my garden, thinking it would be a good replacement for lemon juice in various recipes, like making pies and stuff. And I kept forgetting about it. I finally this year started using it, so I've been adding it to my peach pies that obviously I've been making with the peaches, and my apple pies that I've obviously been making with the apples coming off my tree. And by the way, here's a picture of the last two pies I made when we went over to our friends. So one of them was a gluten-free and one of them was not. And in that case, I use about a tablespoon of the rhubarb powder in there at least. And so that's going to add a nice flavor to the apples and the peaches and whatever. But I also did the same thing with the syrup. So again, remembering that a lot of this was the skins, so I wanted to get that flavor in there. So I added a couple tablespoons or so of the rhubarb powder to that. So it's really a peach rhubarb syrup. But anyway, it turned out pretty tasty. And in this case, by the way, these were the 4 jars lids, and I thought I would try using the inversion method for sealing these, which used to always work well with the ball and cur lids. That doesn't seem to work as well anymore. But the inversion method for canning means as long as your jars are hot, the ingredients you're putting in there are hot, because you want the jars hot first, so you're not breaking them when you pour hot liquid in there. And then I put the syrup in there, and then make sure the top of the rim of the jar is nice and clean, and then put the lid on, put the band on very snug, and then invert it for about 10 minutes, and then turn it back over, and then the lids will seal. And that's the way I always used to use to make jam. And so since I hadn't tried that with 4 jars, I was going to do it with the Superb brand lids, and I ended up grabbing just the 4 jars and wasn't thinking until I got through the process, and I was like, oh yeah, I was going to use the Superb lids with that too. But anyway, they all sealed, no problem. And so I've got 5 jars of peach syrup. I've currently got 7 jars of peaches. I would have canned more, but I still have a lot of peaches from previous years canned up. So, and then these, by the way, for those of you who are new to canning and you might not have seen these before, these are Tatler lids. They're different than your metal lids. And these are forever reusable. As long as they're still intact, they're reusable. And they're a little more expensive, but they're all American made. I love the Tatler lids, and I use them quite often, and I have a video on how to use them. The way you use them does differ a little bit than the way that you use metal lids. So I suggest you check out that video if you'd like to learn more about it, and I'll put that in the description box down below. The only thing, Tatler lids, especially the ones they have out now, they don't vacuum seal well. So I wanted to say that real quick because I get to ask that question a lot. Okay, the second thing was something I was going to talk about in last week's video, and I'd laid out the video. I'd actually had everything ready to go in my editor before I even shot the video, the label and everything. And I was going to talk about making pork-free sausage. And then I ended up not talking about it. It was one of the things I crossed off my list because I already had so much to talk about. So for all you people that saw it when it first published and you're looking for pork-free sausage that I never talked about, yeah, I'm sorry. But let's talk about that a little bit today. Since I'm starting to I'm cutting pork from my diet altogether now. I'm going back to what I used to do. I would make a pork-free breakfast sausage. And so I have a recipe. I actually have 2 recipes on that because one, I'm using ground beef, which has more fat in it than ground venison. And so the way I do the ground venison or ground elk, because they have less fat in it, it is better if you add a little bit of fat to it, even if it's just some kind of oil. So I have 2 separate videos and I'll link to them down below. If you like having meat in the morning, it's really a tasty way to do it. And you can get a bunch made up. In fact, what I'm planning on doing is making some up and then freezing them in 2s and then just thawing them out as we need it. Since typically I don't eat breakfast, but Patrick does, 2 is usually plenty. And, you know, obviously it's going to depend on how big you make of them. And then I also did a video on making like a pork-free Italian sausage, quote unquote. Basically, it was just ground meat, adding Italian spices to it. But one thing I didn't think of is adding some fennel seed to that. So that's the only thing I don't mention in that video that I do differently now is I do add some fennel seed that really just adds a little more of that Italian flavor. And the great thing about the Italian sausage is that that's something if you're making your own homemade pizzas, then you can use that. That was my purpose of coming up with that, is using that in replace of pepperoni or other types of sausage you might put on there. Because any of those that you buy from the store are made from pork. So that's something that you can do. Just ground meat and then season it up and then just put it on top of your pizza. It's really good. So yeah, I'm getting back into doing that. So anyway, I'll link to that video as well for those of you who are interested. And then I'm hoping to develop a few more recipes as I go. I'm the kind of person that I like to just make up my own thing. Sometimes I'll go see what other people do, but I still like making up my own thing. It's just the way I am. I like whatever I make up, especially if I'm going to do a video on it. I like it to be mine. It's funny because when I did the peach peel syrup, people were like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that. What's your recipe?" It's like, I don't know. I just made it up on the fly. It was just as I was peeling peaches, that was my decision I made while I was doing it. I didn't look up any recipes. I didn't know if anyone ever did it before. I figured maybe they did, but if nothing else, I was going to do it and give it a try. Okay, so talking about preserving food, let me mention I have a video coming out on 2 different potato related videos coming out in a few weeks. So one is about growing potatoes because people keep asking me. They saw the pictures of my potatoes. The last couple of years I've been getting some really big potatoes. And so I've got a video on that, growing them, and then that's also a video on different ways that you can put up your potatoes through the year. And then I have another video just on dehydrating potatoes. But one of the things I forgot to cover was the curing of the potatoes, which I never really thought of it as curing, but some people call it that. And one of the things is if you're not going to dehydrate or can your potatoes and you're wanting to store them in a root cellar or some kind of cold storage, you do need to let them dry for a few days. So some people will say you leave the dirt on it, it'll help preserve them for longer. Well, I disagree with that. And I disagree with that because I've been growing potatoes for many years. And one thing I found is if you don't wash that dirt off, you don't know if there might be a baby slug caked in there somehow or a worm. Or if maybe there's a hole in the potato. that was covered up by the dirt. Maybe it was a hole that you made as you were using maybe your pitchfork or your digging fork and you didn't see that, is those are the places that are going to be the first places to rot. And then, of course, if there's some kind of bug in there that just stays in there, it's going to just keep eating that. I've learned that from experience. And I started washing my potatoes from that point on. So I wash all the dirt off the potatoes. I inspect them. I look for any dings or scrapes or places that maybe I accidentally just chopped it off as I was, digging them up somehow. And those are the potatoes I work through first. And then the rest of them, once they've dried for about 3 days on the counter, so I lay them out in a single layer on towels, which is another reason why I don't dig them all up at once. I dig up a bunch, lay them out on the counter on a towel and let them dry for a few days and then turn them over. Remember, turn them over and check them and make sure they're getting thoroughly dried all the way around, because if they're not dried when you put them into storage, they will rot. I did mention in the video about how I layer them in straw, or in this case I decided to try, since I get a lot of the brown paper from packing, that I'm trying that, kind of crumpling it up and putting that between the layers. The main thing is you want them spread out. You want airflow. That's what matters. You're having them dry, but also making sure they're getting some kind of airflow and not just thrown into a box as is or into a bag. Made that mistake before too. They just got to be able to have some kind of air getting around them, especially when you get boxes like the produce boxes that have the holes on the side. Those are the best if you can do that. And straw works really well. It just tends to be a little messier if you're keeping it in a cool room in your house like we do, because we don't have a root cellar here. I want to talk a little bit about the thyroid video that Patrick and I did back in 2018. And it's funny how lately, in the past year or so since that video's been out, and remember, it came out in 2018. So at that point, we'd been off the thyroid medication for about 6 years, and it has now been 11 and a half years at the time that I'm shooting this video that we took ourselves off the thyroid medication. But in that video, we were sitting in my dance room, my old dance room, my studio in there, and all the light we had was overhead, and we were kind of away from the camera, a little bit far away from the camera. We should have probably been sitting a little bit closer. I didn't have a ring light back then. So the thing with videos like that is when you're talking about stuff like that and sharing with people about how you got off the thyroid medication and how good you're doing and blah, 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 you'll have people that will come in and they don't want to believe you. So they'll study everything about what they're seeing and start making false claims because they're looking at something that was shot with poor lighting, or they're seeing the gray hair on top of my head and assuming it's a bald spot. And so, there was a couple times people come in and say, I see your hair is thinning, or your eyebrows are thinning, or you've got dark circles under your eyes. Let's remember, light coming from straight overhead is going to make it look like you have dark circles under your eyes. And there was even one person who randomly said that Patrick had some kind of lumps on his throat. No, it's so silly. It's people looking for excuses because they don't want to believe that it can actually be done. Now, some of these people are probably just trolls. Some of these people that are so dependent on their medication and they're too afraid to give it a try. Some people don't want to believe their doctors have been lying to them. The doctors probably haven't been lying to them in the sense that they believe it too, but the medical industry in general is lying to them. And not everyone, I'm not saying everyone can go off their thyroid medication, especially if their thyroid glands have been removed. But in most cases, people that are on thyroid medication, cholesterol medication, and high blood pressure medication, most cases these people don't need to be on them, just like we didn't either. So getting off the thyroid medication was a really good thing for us. So I just wanted to bring that up. So when you're studying things, if you're just looking for something that's wrong, maybe it's you that's the problem, not the person. Bad lighting can make a difference, like we had, just overhead lighting can really make a difference in what a person looks like in real life. You can see I am certainly not bald, and I'm not balding, and I don't have dark circles under my eyes. Who knows what this lighting is making it look like, but at least I got lighting coming straight at me this time. But anyway, I'm going to link to that video down below for people who are interested. And then in 2022, I did basically an update, a thyroid update and shared a little bit more information on that. And I will link to that down below too for those who are interested. And then I've had a couple people recently ask me about the Rain Country quilt collaboration. So last year or so, people were sending me completed quilt squares for me to put together a Rain Country quilt. And I have enough to put that quilt together, but it was right after I got enough to do that I got my knee injury that has been taking a long time to heal, because just like I figured, just from what I researched, it's one of those kind of injuries that can take up to a year. It's way better now. I can do so much more now, and I am back to sewing on my treadle machine, but I'm only doing things that are little small things, like repairing something or making these little covers here. They only take a couple minutes. But tackling something like, I have a skirt cut out for myself because I need to make myself another skirt. A lot of my work skirts are getting pretty thrashed. I keep having to sew them back together, getting holes in them because I've been wearing them for years. I'm still trying to take it easy on that knee. So even tackling something like putting together a skirt is just a little bit too big of a task for me to take on unless I work on it in tiny bits at a time, which I'm not really willing to do, because I know me. Once I start tackling that skirt, I'm gonna wanna keep working on it until I'm done. And the same thing's gonna go with the quilt. So I'm sorry for all of you who sent in a quilt square. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the day where I can start putting that together, maybe even just sewing a couple squares together at a time, if I can get myself to stick to a couple squares at a time. Of course, the other issue is time, being a lot more busy now with 3 grandbabies I'm watching, and 4 days a week I watch grandbabies, and 2 of those days I watch all 3 of them at the same time. So it gets pretty chaotic around here some days, and then trying to keep up on videos and blah blah blah. And typically I only have 1 day in the week to shoot all of my videos, and then also get busy editing the videos, which is hours and hours of work. And then another thing is, I want to remind people on the Rumble videos. I have a list of Rumble only videos, so you don't have to go find them. You just need the list. The list has all the links to each of the videos. I'll put that link down below. What I need to do is actually put that link in my upload default, so it's always in there. But anyway, I'll make sure I put it under this video. But you know, if you can't find it, just ask. I'll send you the direct link that has the full list of Rumble only videos. That means videos that I've had to either remove from YouTube and are only on Rumble, or videos that have been edited for YouTube and the full version is on Rumble, or videos that I've created only for Rumble, which I'm going to start doing, hopefully at least on a once a month basis. It is extra work to do that, because that's just like making a whole separate video just for Rumble while I still have another video coming out on YouTube that same day. So that means I have to shoot 2 videos for the same day and edit 2 videos for that same day. So that's twice as much work for 1 day. But at any rate, I have a video coming out in a few weeks just on Rumble that's going to be basically the Rumble or BitChute or non-YouTube this and that. So I'm going to try to do that at least once a month if I can, as time allows. So I have my first one coming out in a few weeks. And so if you're subscribed to me there, then obviously you're going to see them as they come out. If you're new, or you don't have a subscription, or you don't want a Rumble account, but you can still view videos over there without having a Rumble account, just save the link to my channel over there, and then you can just check in that way. Not having an account just simply means you can't comment or like on any video, but you can still watch them, and you can't subscribe obviously. But if you just save the link, save the channel link, and then you just go to that link. That's what I used to do years ago, before I had subscriptions to anything. I just saved links to places I wanted to check in with daily in my bookmarks, and then I just go check in, different channels and websites and so on. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was, okay, so this last week I had a video come out about bugging out. Now, the bugging out, I think some people have kind of misunderstood. It was basically everything beyond just your regular bug out bag or go bag, whatever you call it, which we have. So I didn't go in that video, I didn't go over all the details of what's in our bags, because we already have videos out on that. And that 5 points on bugging out was about everything else. Kind of looking at the extra items that you wouldn't typically think to have on hand or keep in your bug out bag. So if you want to know more, so a lot of people are saying, well, make sure you have water and a water filter. Yep. These are things that are in our bags. Make sure you have a sewing kit. Yep, we got a sewing kit. And a lot of the things that people were mentioning were things that we already have in our bags, which is why I didn't go into all those details in that video. And I did mention that, but I just want to remind everyone, if you're interested in more about the details of the kind of things we carry, I have at least a 7-part, what I'm calling On the Go Preparedness. I kept changing the name of it, and finally I decided on the Go Preparedness, because I have all these different types of bags and purses. It's in a series. I get the one big bag, I got a little bag that goes inside the bigger bag, and then blah, blah, blah. And it just depends on the scenario and what vehicle we're taking and where we're going. So anyway, yeah, go check that out. And if you want to also check out the 5 points on bugging out. I'll put that video in the description box down below. By the way, you access the description box by looking right down here below the screen. You'll see the word more, and it doesn't matter what device you're on, doesn't matter if you're on Rumble or YouTube, you should be able to see the word more or show more. Click on that, it'll open it up, and you'll be able to find every link that I put in there, including our email address. So anyway, that was my this and that for the week. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, anything you want to share, just go ahead and put those in comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care. And God bless.